The PS5 Pro or the PlayStation 5 Pro has been unveiled, and while it does have a lot of somewhat impressive hardware upgrades, there are also a lot of downsides to this release, including the fact that it's very expensive, it doesn't come with a disc drive in the box, you have to buy that separately, and it also doesn't even come with a vertical stand. So, with all that in mind, let's get into it.
Let's go! Most PS5 games offer a fidelity mode and a performance mode. And for those of you who don't know, a fidelity mode prioritizes graphics over frame rate, and a performance mode prioritizes frame rate over graphics.
Now, you can't really blanket term this because every game is different, but usually a fidelity mode will mean something like 4K 30 frames per second, whereas a performance mode will mean 1080p and 60 frames per second. And in some cases it varies a little bit, it's a little bit different, but it's generally around those numbers. Now, one of the goals of the PS5 Pro is to make it to where you don't have to choose between the two as much. They haven't, stated any numbers for what certain games are going to be running at, but I'm guessing that it's going to make things like 4K 60 or maybe 1080p 90 or 1080p 120 more attainable. And for some people, that's definitely good. I mean, good performance is definitely a good thing. However, I really don't think that this hardware upgrade is needed for better performance. I feel like the base PS5 hasn't really been explored to its fullest yet, and that's just really sad. I mean, if you look at the kind of games that really take the PS5 for all it's worth, meaning games that haven't been on the PS4 or some other kind of console that is less powerful, well, that's a very short list. There are very few games that actually utilize the PS5, and that just makes me think the PS5 Pro is a little bit of a cash grab. This console is going to have a very short lifespan. The original PS5 launched in 2020, and this one is obviously going to launch in 2024. This means that if we're going by past PlayStation's life cycles, this console has about 3 years before the PS6 comes out and makes it irrelevant. Now, given that the PS5 had some abnormal circumstances at the start of its life, it's completely possible that they might extend this console's lifespan a little bit, in which case the PS5 Pro might have 4 or 5 years to shine, but if we're going by the past of PlayStation, it's going to have about 3 years before a replacement's out. And $700 for a console that's only going to be good for about 3 years and only offers somewhat of a noticeable difference is kind of a hard pill to swallow.
Not to mention, there's still a lot of people out there that don't have a 4K television. And if you don't have a 4K television, you're not going to be able to utilize the graphical improvements the PS5 Pro has to offer.
You might get faster loads and whatnot, but is paying $700 really worth it for a console with somewhat faster load times? I mean, the PS5 itself is already pretty freaking fast on most load times. I mean, if you remember the PS4, load times on that were brutal sometimes. I mean, there were load times that would approach a minute long for some games, and it only got worse as the generation went on and the games started pushing the hardware more and more. And then when you went to the PS5, it was like a night and day difference. The base PS5 practically made load screens extinct. There's still some, but they're very few and far between, and they never last long, which is a good thing. So to me, performance-wise, there's not really much need for an upgrade to the PS5 Pro, and honestly, I feel like that's how most players are going to feel. Most players are going to feel like this upgrade is completely unnecessary. I think only the people that are the absolute snootiest about graphics are really going to get any good out of this. And I'm not knocking you if that's you. If you're the type of person that wants to get the most frames out of every game and you want to get the highest resolution, that's fine. You can do that if you want to do that. I don't have anything against that, but I think that this is a bad marketing tactic from Sony to sell this console that has a slightly better performance, that has the type of improvements that most people aren't going to notice, but is nearly double the price in some regions.
Sounds an awful lot like a cash grab, don't it?
And not only that, this model doesn't even come with a disk drive. That's right, apparently the console's not already expensive enough. If you want a disk drive, you have to buy that separately as well. And it doesn't even come with a vertical stand either. I don't know what they're playing at here, but this is almost borderline trolling.
Yeah, it does seem a little, if I had to say anything, malicious. It seems like Sony is testing to see what they can get away with. And on top of that, with this optional disk drive that you have to fork out $80 on, and you already spent a ton of money on the console itself, it almost seems like they're trying to inconvenience people into going digital. It's a tactic I don't like very much.
Now, to put this in perspective and how expensive it really is, if you compare it to every other PlayStation and adjust those prices for inflation, what they came to in 2024 would be a little bit shocking. So the PS1 in 2024 would be $611 when adjusted for inflation. The PS2 would be $546, the PS3 would be $778, the PS4 would be $538, the PS4 Pro would be $522, and the base PS5 would have been $606. And of course, the PS5 Pro is going to set at $699. That means that the PS5 Pro is the second most expensive PlayStation of all time, only narrowly outdone by the launch PS3. And we all know how much of a controversy that was.
And that's not even including the disk drive and stand. So, when you take that all into account, the PS5 Pro is the most expensive PlayStation console to date. So now you can plainly see why the chasm between consoles and PC is narrowing.
Now, if you bought the PS5 Pro, the stand, and the disk drive, that would be about $810 USD. And I know what you're going to say, any PC for that price would not be cutting edge, and that's true, but it's getting close to that level. $810 is a lot for a console, because for a couple hundred more, you could have a very, very good PC that would run just about any game that was coming out at very good settings, and it would also not be a closed source platform. You could do multiple things on a PC. So you can see when a console starts to reach this level of pricing, it starts to lose its value of being an easy and accessible form of gaming. It's still cheaper than a PC, but at price points like this, that gap is quickly narrowing.
Do you see it yet?
So the price at $700 without the disk drive or the stand is bad enough already in the US, but it's even worse around the world. In Japan, when you convert the price from yen to US dollars, it comes out to something around $847. So yeah, it's already pretty bad in the US, but it's even worse abroad. The thing that a lot of people don't talk about is that when you buy digital games, you don't actually own any of those games. You're buying a license to play those games on almost every platform. This is true for PlayStation games, Nintendo games, Xbox games, and even most PC storefronts like Steam. The only place I know of that offers DRM-free purchases is GOG.com. However, for most other websites and storefronts, you're not actually buying a game, you're simply buying a license to play a game. Now, physical media is different. Physical media is something that you can actually touch. It's a physical item, so it can't be managed or taken away from you in the same way that a digital object can. And I know that a lot of people are going to start saying, oh, this is crazy conspiracy talk, censorship will never happen, you'll never have to worry about things like this, but I disagree. I think that major corporations should never be given that much power over our media. They should never be given complete control over what we can play or what we can watch. I think that it's important for us to have the option to actually own our media. And if you don't think that, you're entitled to your opinion, but I think it's a very foolish opinion.
Yeah, I think as a good rule of thumb, just to be on the safe side, the ball should always be in the people's court.
And look, I'm glad that Sony at least added the option for us to use this on this console, albeit having to buy it separately, which is definitely a stinger, but I'm glad that they at least included the option to do it. But I really don't like that that option doesn't come in the box. That, to me, seems like it's a step in the wrong direction. I mean, this console arriving to the customer in an all-digital form means that most people are not going to want to even mess with physical media. Most people are just going to go with the ultra-convenient digital. And yeah, I'll admit, digital is very convenient, but I don't think it's good for gaming as a whole long term. And I think that this could make physical sales even lower, possibly to the point to where the PS6 releases as an all-digital format with no physical media whatsoever. And as much as I love PlayStation and I've grown up on PlayStation, if that happens, then I'll be forced to consider other options like Steam. Because if I'm going to be forced to go all digital, I'm not going to do it on a platform that's going to be obsolete within 5 to 7 years. You see, that's the main advantage PC has over console when it comes to digital. Both of them have their drawbacks, but digital on a console is just horrible because consoles, no matter what you do, go obsolete. Eventually their storefronts close and then the games become inaccessible. If you've already bought the games, they'll probably stay accessible longer, but there'll be no way to purchase new games once the storefront closes. This already almost happened with the PS3. Sony almost shut down the storefront on that console, and due to massive backlash, they decided to keep it up. But let's be real, they're still going to shut it down at some point. And when they shut it down, that means a lot of games are going to become inaccessible. Yes, I know it's 2024, and there's a lot of people that just want to do the most cutting-edge thing all the time, and they think we're absolute idiots for wanting disc, for wanting to actually own our games. But all I'll say is that if your ego is that fragile that you always have to do the most cutting edge thing and you think people are dumb for using discs and wanting to actually own their media, then maybe you need to work on that.
If I cared about what people thought of me, I'd be out of this game a long time ago.
And if you prefer digital, then that's 100% fine. Like I said, I'm not knocking you, and I really can't blame you in a lot of cases. Digital is very convenient. There's no denying that. But you have to also understand why some people prefer physical and why it's important for it to continue to exist. It is an important part of media preservation, and media preservation as a whole is important. And when it comes to games, as much as we all love them, they're one of the most poorly preserved forms of media out there. I mean, when you think about it, every other form of media is preserved better than video games are. There are still movies from 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that you can easily still watch because it's so easy to preserve those because it's as simple as preserving a video file. And then there's music. You know, people still listen to music from 20, 30 years ago. Why is it with games, so many older games have just faded into complete obscurity and only a select few of really popular ones have remained viable? It's not a good look, and it's something the industry really needs to improve on, and I definitely don't think eliminating physical software is the way to go about doing that. But that about wraps up our thoughts on the PS5 Pro. Let us know if you guys agree, if you think that we're correct in our concerns, or if you think we're totally wrong and you're really excited to get this console. We'd love to hear what you think either way.
Yes, and before I go, I just want to say that there are pros and cons to both digital and physical, and I don't need to justify my love to you for physical media, just like you don't have to justify your love for digital media to me. Alright. Past, present, coexist in sweet harmony, and games are safe at last. Sounds like a good plan to me. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.